Government to launch a charm offensive on external creditors as the IMF staff demands the assurances to present a $3 billion extended credit facility to the executive board.
So even as we engage the domestic in the exchange, we'll be looking for our discussions with the bilateral partners and also with our bond investors.
But the minority is asking government to stop dancing after reaching the staff level agreement, saying it is nothing.
Staff level agreement, I see them dancing and celebrating to it premature. Our debt is still not sustainable. The debt exchange initiative of the minister may probably fail.
We have details as the minority insists government must bring to Parliament its debt restructuring agreement.
Even the debt exchange, they must bring something and lay here for the people of Ghana. The Minister of Finance cannot just walk away as if everything in this country is determined by him.
I believe that all those requisite documents will be subjected to parliamentary scrutiny.
Trade and Industry Committee puts on ice approval of 80 million cedis allocated for the construction of the controversial National Cathedral.
Those who expended the money, we are inviting them. We are inviting the Secretariat to come and explain to us, and possibly the Minister for Finance to come and explain to us how they spend those monies. If not, it will be unquestionable that we go ahead to approve this.
And also, Accra High Court accepts terms of settlement reached between defunct Capital Bank boss as he pleads guilty to all charges leveled against him, including conspiracy to stealing, and money laundering.
If the first accused person decides to pay 19.99 million Ghana cedis by the 28th of February, the following day, we'll make sure that he's arrested.
Hello again, let's settle for the details. Now we begin from Parliament because the Minority Leader, Hannah Idrisu, says government and the NPP must stop jubilating over the staff level agreement reached with the International Monetary Fund. The agreement signifies a significant progress in Ghana's effort to reach a $3 billion deal with the fund to help in the country's ailing economy. Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante has details of reaction to the staff level agreement from Parliament.
The Minority Leader, Haruna Idrisu, claims government functionaries and NPP activists are jubilating over the agreement announced today. Haruna Idrisu says there's nothing to be excited about.
For staff level agreement, I see them dancing and celebrating to it premature. Our debt is still not sustainable. The debt exchange initiative of the minister may probably fail. Or staff level agreement to us means nothing. He must come with board approval and management approval. If you read the text well of the agreement which has been signed, two important paragraphs. The second paragraph emphasizes reforms. There aren't enough reforms even in the budget for us to think that we are reforming and restructuring the economy. It's also conditional on other matters relating to making debt sustainable, a precondition, and satisfied.
The Minority Leader has also been demanding that the Finance Ministry brings to Parliament its debt restructuring arrangement for approval.
Even the debt exchange, they must bring something and lay here for the people of Ghana. The Minister of Finance cannot just walk away as if everything in this country is determined by him. If you are doing haircut, and you are changing contents of agreement, whether domestic or external, they are contractual, and those contractual comes with obligations. He must come and lay a paper in this house how he intends to work on the external debt, because when this house approved those loans agreement, we approved them consistent with Article 181, terms and conditions. You can't vary the terms at your pleasure or as it pleases a certain Minister for Finance. Those terms and conditions must be brought to this house for our scrutiny.
But Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee, Patrick Boama, says if there is any of the arrangements that must come to Parliament, government will not hesitate to do so.
The Minority Leader made serious statements with regards to the government's debt exchange program. and also the fact that certain documents ought to be laid before the House. I believe that all those requisite documents will be subjected to parliamentary scrutiny. The first step is what has been announced. Every step that requires the people's representative to look at, I believe, will have the opportunity to look at that. So I want him to be rest assured, to allay his fears.
The minority insists that the details of that debt restructuring program that government has announced and which it is currently implementing must be brought before Parliament. There are those who have opined that because of the legalities and the nature of that arrangement, it does not have to come to Parliament. But some NPP MPs have been assuring the minority that if there is the need to bring some of those fine details to Parliament, then that will be done. But with government now getting the staff level arrangement with the IMF officials who came down to negotiate, it is expected that in the next few months, government will be able to get the final authorization from the IMF board to be able to enroll and finally implement an IMF program. That may take some time, given the fine details of the domestic debt exchange program as well as the external debt exchange program to be able to bring Ghana's debts to sustainable levels. Reporting for Joy News, Kweku Asante, Parliament House, Accra.
But it's been long in coming, with several promises, missed deadlines, and its attendant effect on the macroeconomic stability of the country. But after several months of negotiations, Ghana has reached a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund for economic policies and reforms. We have more in the following News Desk report.
The $3 billion extended credit facility is expected to help restore macroeconomic stability, address structural weaknesses and enhance resilience to shocks the economy has suffered, while protecting the vulnerable, preserving financial stability and laying the foundation for a strong and inclusive recovery. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has been given details of their negotiations with the fund, highlighting the deliverables that has culminated in this agreement.
So the key deliverables over the period include the preparation of the PCPEC program, medium-term macroeconomic framework, debt sustainability analysis and debt management strategy, structural reforms to address structural bottlenecks, improve competitiveness and promote efficiency and effectiveness, a memorandum of economic and financial policies, and an agreement on prior actions which are expected to be completed before the fund goes to the board.
But to seal the deal, the staff of the IMF say they will need the assurances of our creditors on our debt restructuring program before they can present this staff-level agreement to the IMF Executive Board. Stefan Rudet is leader of the team.
What is necessary for us to be able to present that program request to the board is assurances from Ghana's partners and Ghana's creditors that one, the program is fully financed. In other words, the financial support that will be provided to the authorities during the program period is sufficient to finance the program.
In response, Ghana's Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announced that government will now earnestly start negotiating with our external creditors to restructure our debt.
Key fiscal measures, structural reforms, and the medium-term macro-fiscal framework in the 2023 budget are aligned with the IMF-supported program. It is therefore crucial that we receive support from all stakeholders, especially Parliament, to ensure that the 2023 budget, including all revenue measures, are passed and not return to last year's experience that we had. And the creditors also to ensure a successful debt operation. So even as we engage the domestic in the exchange, we'll be looking for our discussions with the bilateral partners and also with our bond investors.
But given the level of agitation and rejection of the domestic debt exchange program, what are our chances of success? And is the IMF taking note of the reactions by stakeholders? When asked the question, here's what the IMF team lead, Stefan Rudet, said.
What is very important for the IMF is that the government strategy as a whole be sufficient to put debt on a sustainable path and to bring debt sustainability over the medium term. This is really the overarching goal of one of the overarching goals of the program. Now, when it comes to the specifics of the government's debt restructuring strategy, when it comes to, for example, the perimeter of the debt restructuring, which debt would be included or not included, when it comes to the parameters of the debt restructuring, in other words, what type of relief would be sought from one type of creditors or another, and when it comes to engagement between the government and the creditors, all of that are very much sovereign decisions, and they are very much for the government to decide on in collaboration with their financial and legal advisors.
It remains a sovereign decision. That is the IMF position on the agitation by stakeholders. So that begs the question, will TUC and other stakeholders get their demand from government?
That with regards to the trade union, the TUC, I think it's not a very surprising position because it is, all of these things are shocks that we need to analyze and then make determinations as to how best to move forward as a nation. But we've been able to do literally the.
Let's go to the phone lines now and speak to an economist, Professor Charles Aka. He's at the University of Ghana and with ISA. Prof, thank you very much for your time here on Joy News Prime. And so we have secured a staff level agreement, but the fund is monitoring keenly the success of our debt restructuring program, both the domestic one and the external one. Given the demands by labor, by TUC and the various stakeholders, even at the domestic level, how do you advise government navigate this path in order to secure a final deal with the IMF?
Okay, thank you very much. So I think the government needs to take labor and all the domestic investors quite seriously and broaden the negotiation. I expect the government to also not just give in to every demand that the IMF is making, because they have to have an eye on the long-term perspective of whatever policies they take. The IMF program is just a short-term 3-year program. And since we've had 17 such programs almost, it means that it's not a sustainable way of financing our development. So anything that we will do, if we don't negotiate properly, we will be on the program for 3 years, just like we left the previous one. And then in another 2, 3, 5 years, we'll be back again. So if the domestic stakeholders are saying, no, this is not good for us, this is going to affect our balance sheet, this is going to reduce employment and growth and increase poverty, we need to actually take that seriously and negotiate with the IMF more strongly. I think so far the negotiation has not been as strong as I expect, because I think the debt restructuring program is a bit too draconian. And I think we could have a better discussion around that to see how to minimize the negative impact and the pain on the economy.
But Prof, wouldn't the suggestion of not taking everything the IMF says be detrimental for our progress? Seeing that many have said that reaching an agreement, even at this level, considering the weight of our crisis, like the finance minister said, is a miracle. And therefore, perhaps we should be pandering more to the dictates of the IMF in order to fast track this, because we need this in order to come out of the quagmire.
We should not, I think we need to emancipate ourselves also from, I just Bob Marley that says emancipate yourself from mental slavery. We should not think that if the IMF is not there, then Ghana will collapse. That would be very unfortunate to bring ourselves to such a humiliating point of view. I think there are several options that we have not really explored. I don't think that we are at a situation where there's no alternative except the IMF. That's totally wrong for anybody to think like that. if we look at our debt situation carefully and take the domestic debt and take the foreign debt and look at how much is due in 2023, how much is maturing in 2024, 2025, in the next 3 years, how much the IMF is giving, and how much interest payment we need to pay, I think if we are willing to take serious domestic steps, we will be able to survive. If you look at the history of many other countries that have gone through crisis, not every country went to IMF. Check the IMF record and see how many countries have gone to the IMF for a program, and check whether you see any developed country in them. You will see that most of those countries that have gone to IMF 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, they are still struggling. They are still developing. So it's not as if there are countries like Malaysia. I'll give you an example. South Korea, Malaysia, they've suffered serious financial crisis in the 90s. They didn't go to IMF for such a draconian policy and do domestic debt restructuring. They refused. And yet they were able to come out of it within a year or two. And those countries have gone far. Their per capita income is around $50,000 per capita for South Korea. And for Malaysia, it's about close to $12,000. And if we are willing to sit down with stakeholders broadly to discuss what are the alternatives, I believe that there are very nice alternatives, even to the IMF. But even if we decide to go to the IMF, we don't just have to pander to whatever they ask. We've been to the IMF before, and we know that some of the things they asked us to do didn't really help this economy. We know the poverty. Even for Jamaica, look at the literature of Jamaica. When Jamaica went to the IMF, they had to go there twice within 3 years. The first program didn't succeed. After they had done all their debt restructuring, poverty increased, unemployment increased, and their debt to GDP increased again, about 135%. And in 3 years, they went back to the IMF again for the second time and did another debt test. So did it
Prof,
twice.
isn't it why the push by the IMF to have structural changes as part of this program very necessary and laudable?
Yes, so structural changes we have been talking about. IMF and World Bank started talking about structural changes since the structural adjustment program in the 80s. We have not done those things we are supposed to do. So we have joked, we have never invested in the critical sectors like agriculture, industrialization. So if we don't do that, of course, you don't need IMF to tell us. Everybody who's done economics, all of us, I studied economics several years ago. I've been partners as an economist for all these years. Right. There's nobody who doesn't know that what we need is structural adjustment and also an efficient government and to reduce the government side. We know it. So if we are not doing it and we need IMF to come and tell us as if it's something new, I don't understand.
Well, we'll leave it here. I'm grateful that you could join us. That's Professor Charles Aka there, an economist at the University of Ghana. And we'll do some other stories here on Joy News Prime. The Trade and Industry Committee has put on hold the approval of 80 million cedis allocated for the construction of the National Cathedral. The allocation was made to the Ministry for Tourism and has failed to go through the committee because MPs want more answers from the minister. According to the Tamale Central MP, until the committee is satisfied, they will approve the ministry's estimate without the allocation made to the cathedral.
What the committee decided was that, one, we cannot just approve this 80 million for you. We must know how the other 339 million was spent. Because like I told you, when we are looking at budget estimates, we have a duty as the legislature to hold the executive accountable.
In terms of what you've approved previously.
Exactly. Even if we didn't, they did it illegally, but we have a mandate now to find out, is the taxpayers' money. How did you spend the 339 million? What did it constitute? The 80 million you want us to approve, how did that 80 million find space in the budget line of the Ministry of Tourism when the minister and the directors could not speak to the questions we were asking? Two, what constitute the 80 million, Ghana cedis you want us to approve? Give us the breakdown. Three, what role did you play in coming out with that? Of course, the minister will not be in the position to answer the earlier two questions. How the 330 million was spent. Those who expended the money, we are inviting them. We are inviting the Secretariat to come and explain to us, and possibly the Minister for Finance to come and explain to us how they spend those monies. If not, it will be unquestionable that we go ahead to approve this. And
So for now you put eyes on it?
Yes, in fact, we demanded the committee.
Taking a decision?
No. How will I explain to the people of Tamale Central that yes, the 80 million was added into the Ministry of Tourism budget? I didn't ask questions. I didn't find out whether the minister and the ministry participated in coming out with that budget line. I didn't even find out the breakdown of that 80 million. I didn't also find out how the 339 million Ghana cedis was already spent, and out of it, how about 25 million Ghana cedis was given to a so-called, international acclaimed architect. So you don't rob money to build it. You want to make money at the expense of people using God as a basis. It's wickedness.
Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed also alleged that the allocation was imposed on the ministry by the presidency without the knowledge of the minister and technocrats at the ministry. He explains why.
The budgets are done through the agencies. You have a budget planning committee of every ministry, and the agencies under the ministry would also plan their budget. They then have a committee to look at the individual agency budgets, and that is conglomerated to give you the ministry budget, including, of course, the budget of the ministry itself. So every aspect of the budget that is presented by the minister on behalf of the ministry and the agencies that the minister is supervising over, that minister must have the information on his fingertips. And therefore, he must speak to each of them because they are all agencies. When we realized that the cathedral, the 80 million cedis, is in the Ministry of Tourism, we asked simple questions. We wanted to find out from the minister whether he made an input in the planning, the calculation of the budget, and what they were going to do, for which reason the 80 million Ghana cedis for the cathedral is found in the ministry budget. The minister could not explain. And I remember I wanted to find out from the chief director, because he's the head of the technical people within the ministry, whether they participated in coming out with the budget. Because the minister ought to know, the chief director ought to know. You can't just allow anybody to put any budget on your ministry and says 80 million. I mean, they could not give us any response. Again, we wanted to find out from the minister, how did they award the contract? Of course, you could not falter the minister for the amount of money that have been spent already, because when they were spending the 339 million Ghana cedis, it was not under the Ministry of Tourism. But we want to know this amount of money, how they arrive at that. Again, when we look at the agencies under the Ministry of Tourism, they could not tell us under which agency is the cathedral project is going to fall, because it must fall under a particular agency. If it is not directly under the Ministry of Tourism, we can't find it under any of the agencies, then it must as well they should keep it in the office of the president. Is it the case that it was imposed on the minister and the ministry from the Flagstaff House? And I guess the sense that was what happened, because if it wasn't imposed on the ministry, the minister or the chief director and the directors who were all there, including all the directors of the agencies or heads of the agencies, they should have been able to provide us with the answers. They couldn't do that. So it is ridiculous, to be very honest with you, to have that under the budget line of the Ministry of Tourism, yet the minister and the directors cannot speak to it. That is just ridiculous.
Meanwhile, you may recall the comments by the Ochene that the cathedral must be built so that it does not bring shame to the presidency, because the president made the promise, has generated controversy. Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed has been responding to that, and we'll bring you details of that in our subsequent bulletins. But let's do some other stories right now. Let me take you to the court, because an Accra High Court today accepted the terms of settlement reached between state prosecutors and William Atu-Essien, who is CEO of the defunct Capital Bank. Now, per the terms of the settlement, Mr. Essien is expected to pay 90 million Ghana cedis. 30 million cedis has already been paid, and he's expected to pay the remaining amounts in 3 installments. 2 other accused persons who stood trial with him, that's Fitzgerald Odonko, Reverend, and Tete Nate, were both acquitted and discharged on their charges today. All three stood trial for 3 years, battling the charges of conspiracy to steal, stealing, and money laundering. Now, Mr. Atuesian changed his plea from not guilty to guilty on all three charges today in court. And Richard Kojo Manu, who was in court, joins me in the studio with a breakdown of what transpired. Richard, the last time we sat in court, the terms of the agreement was rejected by the court, who by the judge, was really angry, angry with the state. What changed this time around?
Well, so when the case was called, the judge invited the state prosecutors led by the Deputy AG Alfred Triayabwa, and then he indicated that indeed Section 35 of the Court Act actually applies in this case. He cited instances that would back his claims. He said that the monies involved belong to the state. First of all, when the banks were collapsed, Capital Bank was also collapsed as well, and government injected 622 million Ghana cedis liquidity support, and that money actually came from the state. And when Capital Bank was also collapsed, their liabilities and assets were also taken on by a state bank, that is the Ghana Commercial Bank. And so if they look at all of these things, then it means that they actually fall within Section 35 of the Court Act.
But why are we hearing about 90 million now when we were told that initially over 190 million was lost?
Well, so we actually had 192.5 million Ghana cedis, and then the explanation by the Attorney General's office is that 65 million Ghana cedis was actually used to purchase shares at Capital Bank, and so that money in the course of investigation was retrieved, and then the state had it, and then another 35 million Ghana cedis was also used to purchase shares, and so that money was also retrieved, and then the state also had it. Now, in the course of investigations, IOCO also retrieved 1.3 million Ghana cedis. And so if you look at the total amount, we have 65 million Ghana cedis, 35 million Ghana cedis, making 100 million Ghana cedis. And now IOCO also obtained 1.3 million Ghana cedis. So it brings the sum up to like a little over 90 Ghana cedis. But in the course of things, Mr. Atuesian has admitted to actually stealing 57.5 million Ghana cedis. So in terms of compensation and reparation, he is adding 32.5 million Ghana cedis. So 57.5 million Ghana cedis in addition to 32.5 million Ghana cedis actually sums up to 90 million Ghana cedis.
Right, and you've been speaking to the Attorney General on that. We can have that.
In financial crimes, you have two main approaches. You prosecute and as much as possible also recover. So if in the course of prosecuting the matter, an accused person comes out with an offer that's reasonable to the state, we'll consider it and look at the way forward. Because an accused person may be imprisoned, the money that if prosecuted on may still be with him, he comes back and enjoys the booty. Because at the time that you were investigating, you couldn't have any inclination as to where those monies had been hidden. So if possibly, in the other cases, they make offers and we deem them to be reasonable to the state, we may consider it. But if there are offers that are unreasonable, we will not accept them. We'll go ahead and do our work. The last time that we came, there was no opportunity for the parties to explain how they came by the 90 million Ghana cedis. In fact, the first accused person, Atuesian, has always insisted that he has an amount not more than 57.5 million Ghana that he thinks he has stolen. 57.5. And we also were of the view that even if he accepts the 57.5, the money has been with him for some time. So we insisted on getting some reparation for the state. So out of the 90 million, over 32.5 forms part or is part of the reparation. So 57.5 as the admitted sum, the state is being compensated by way of reparation in the sum of 32.5 million Ghana cedis.
So that's the Deputy Attorney General there, but agreement reached, was he convicted?
Yes, he was convicted on his own plea. He pleaded guilty. You know, from the outset of this case, he pleaded not guilty, but today the counts were read to him, 16 of them, to the 3 charges of stealing, conspiracy to steal, and money laundering. So he admitted to it. The Attorney General speaks on it.
Certainly, it's so clear in our terms of settlement. If the first accused person decides to pay 19.99 million Ghana cedis by the 28th of February, the following day, we'll make sure that he's arrested and brought to court the following Monday. So we expect him to go by the terms of this agreement. We will not, under any circumstance, even extend it by a day. We are monitoring, we keep our diaries, check the accounts of the Bank of Ghana to see whether those monies have been paid. If he pays them, so be it. If he doesn't, then the courts will definitely deal with him.
And Richard, we know that there were 2 others who stood trial with William Atuesian, Reverend Odonko, and the other person. They've been acquitted and discharged. What happens then?
So the court actually adjourned sitting for about 30 minutes to amend the judgment. You know, Mr. Atuesian's part had to be taken out of the entire judgment because he prepared the entire judgment. And so the judgment of Mr. Atuesian has actually been suspended. So failure on his part to pay any of the amount that had been agreed would make the state prosecutors go after him, arrest him, and then actually the judgment will be read to him and he will actually be convicted on that plea. But the 2 of them were acquitted and discharged on the 3 counts.
Richard, thank you very much for bringing us those details. You're watching Joy News Prime with me, Ernest Kojo Manu. We're taking a break. When we return, we'll bring you some more stories, plus showbiz. Please stay with us. Hello again, thanks for staying with us here on Joy News Prime. The National Youth Organizer of the NDC, George Opariado, is taking on the party's National Communications Officer, Sammy Gyamfi, for what he describes as influence peddling against him in the lead-up to last weekend's polls. He accuses him of backstabbing and machinations against him in favor of his main contender, Ernest Kojo Gyamfi, whom he describes as a sour loser. He spoke to my colleague, Richard Kojo Manu.
You had some advice for the bigwigs of the party. I mean, what did you go through? Tell me.
I'll prefer not to speak to it anymore. I've spoken enough today, and I've decided that whatever challenges that confronted me, like I said in my victory speech, I think the elders will have to sit up.
Do you think that some people are against you? I mean, were against you?
In every election, you don't expect everybody to support you, but it becomes a bit unfair when lies are propagated against you, and elders who should be calling people to order are sometimes people who are behind some of these lies. It becomes a bit unfair. But all said and done, the Parado won, victory has been delivered, and so nothing really matters anymore.
Now let's talk about the matter of Sammy Gyamfi. You know, when we were at the conference grounds in Cape Coast, he came there, and then people have speculated wildly that, I mean, he has something against you and other people as well. Is that true?
I think the election results determined everything. So whatever he had against me was settled on Congress grounds, so I'm not going to delve into it anymore. What matters most is that the Parado won. And so whatever he may have against me is his own cup of cake. He should carry it and then enjoy it alone. I have made progress. I've moved on.
Do you think that President Mahama had the support of some of these people and that resulted in some of these acrimonies that characterize your victory?
President Mahama had no hand in any of this.
Why are you so convinced?
Because I know President Mahama and I've worked with him. I worked with him as MC when he was vice president. I worked with him as MC when he was president. And I've worked with him as the leader of my party in the run-up to the 2020 election. In the last few years as well, as the national youth organizer, I've worked closely with him. He's giving me all the support I needed to be successful.
And the full interview later, but let's now put the spotlight on the NDC General Secretary candidate, Fifi Fiavekwete, who says he is the perfect replacement for General Secretary Johnson Asiedu Nketiah. He's set to face off, competition from the party's Director of Elections and Deputy General Secretary. My colleague Joseph Akable of our political desk has more on this report.
When today you are hearing Nana Akufo-Addo and the MPP going all over the country shouting free SHS, free SHS, free SHS. That is what you call all lie be lie.
Fifi Kwete was a popular voice on the NDC's Setting the Record Straight platform, but his political journey started long before that. He is one who has journeyed through the ranks of the party. He started out as chairman for the National Democratic Congress branch on the University of Ghana Legon campus. In 2005, he was elected as the party's propaganda secretary. This was the year Johnson Asiedu Nketia became NDC General Secretary. The propaganda secretary position was later rebranded to National Communications Officer, but Fifi Kwete remained the firebrand he has always been.
Finally, I want to say that the courts of the people of Ghana, under the influence of the only Supreme Court in heaven, will speak on December 7th. I repeat, the courts of the people of Ghana, under the influence of the only Supreme Court of heaven, will speak on December 7th. The harder the battle, the sweeter the victory shall be. So may God help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and our might forevermore.
He served as Deputy Minister for Finance when the party won the 2008 elections. In 2012, he entered Parliament representing Ketu South constituency. The period also saw him serve as a Minister of State at the presidency and later taking charge of the Agriculture and Transport Ministry at some point. He left Parliament after opting not to contest in the 2020 polls.
Yeah, kind of.
After you exited Parliament?
Yeah, I do a bit of that. I mean, it's something I like to do, sometimes just to go a bit into the background, watch, reflect, and recharge the batteries. And when the moment calls, I step up again.
He's back 17 years after winning his first national elections within the NDC, seeking to replace Johnson Asiedu Nketia, a man who remained at the party all the time Fifi moved in and out of government and parliament.
The National Security Minister Albert Kandapa has commended the IOCO and other international agencies like the FBI for clamping down on activities of what he describes as a car-stealing syndicate whose operations are causing financial loss to the state. His comments come barely 24 hours after a swoop that led to the confiscation of some 300 vehicles from garages by IOCO and its partners. Speaking at the launch of an asset recovery and management policy framework and the inauguration of the implementation committee members in Accra Tuesday, the minister called on other security agencies to join in the operation to flush out criminals in the system.
Thanks to the excellent work that we are witnessing at IOCO, and I must admit that I'm extremely satisfied, very, very happy with the way things are moving. Ladies and gentlemen, the launch of the Asset Recovery and Management Policy Framework today is historic, and it marks a major leap, a significant leap forward in our efforts as a country to fight economic and organized crime. And let's all agree that the absence of a comprehensive policy framework to govern the recovery and also management of assets over the years has robbed our dear country of maximizing benefits from the work of the institutions such as IOCO. And I believe that the launch of this policy framework and also the implementation committees being launched will shape the path of change in our collective quest to right the wrongs of corruption and return proceeds stolen by economic criminals.
The General Secretary of the Vehicles and Asset Dealers Union of Ghana, Clifford Ansu, joins me on the phone. Mr. Ansu, thank you very much. Yesterday, you held a news conference in which you said the action by the operatives of IOCO and National Security was unlawful because some of your members had actually gone through the legal processes of importing these vehicles and yet were being taken away. The Minister for National Security today says IOCO is, clamping down on a car stealing syndicate. Your reaction to that?
Thank you very much, my brother Ernest Manu, and good evening to all your, I must say, viewers and listeners as well. Yesterday we had a press conference regarding the same issue. You know, last Friday, 9th December, the Yoko and combined police team came to some of our garages here in Accra, raided a lot of cars. They took the cars to unknown destinations. When they even came to some of the garages, they didn't give us any information why they were there to pick the cars. They only came in, some came in the mufti, the different attire, some also were in police, uniform, and others with their face covered. So they were seeing us, but we were not able to see their faces. And according to them, even those cars that were picked, some of the keys were not even there, but they managed to take the cars and tow them to the destination that I said were unknown. Later that, they arrested some of our people, and we also followed to Iroko offices, and they told us that they suspect that those cars and vehicles that were picked were stolen vehicles from Canada and America. In fact, you said these cars are stolen from America and Canada to this place, to Ghana. We, take it as a very strange situation, because in America and Canada, when you are exporting vehicles and cars from such areas, before the cars and vehicles will be able to, exit from their borders, they have a machine at their, point called BACI, batch machine. And this batch machine is a device used to test stolen cars and vehicles, that are passing through their borders before exiting. And we are all aware that Canada and America have a very tight security.
Right. So Mr. Ansu, because of time, you are saying that you do not accept this explanation
we do not accept this explanation. Even this very afternoon, we received a release that Yoko brought in a release that FBI and then Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, combined team, came to Ghana here and came for these cars because they suspect that these cars and vehicles were stolen. Right. And at the moment, as I speak to you, they are saying 37 cars and vehicles are in their possession, which of course we deny that the cars that they took, were more than 37.
Very well. So once you deny this, we'll see how this proceeds. You've issued, a 2-day ultimatum to the ministry and to government to respond to this. Mr. Ansu, we'll return to you in our subsequent bulletins to see what form of engagement you have with government. And that's it for the show. At this point, we have Showbiz with Becky coming up shortly. Please stay.